Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I connect successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Jamie Trull, a CPA who made a bold move to shift her business model from a service-based business to educating small business owners online through courses and social media. And Max McGolan, a business banking expert with KeyBank who helps demystify loans and lines of credit for us. So if either of those sound interesting to you, please go and check out those past episodes wherever you find your podcasts. And remember that we also have the YouTube channel, so you can actually watch video recordings of the podcast on our YouTube channel, which is the Financial Clarity Podcast. So go and check those out. Today's episode is brought to you by my company, Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is dedicated to providing financial clarity and profit maximizing solutions to small businesses. The team at Clara CFO are seasoned accounting professionals with a heart for small business. We help growth-minded entrepreneurs thrive through fractional CFO services and financial education. To learn more about Clara CFO and how we can help your business, visit claracfo.com. So I am very excited to introduce today's guest to you all. She is actually one of our wonderful clients here at Clara CFO Group. Monica Martinez is the co-founder of EduDream, a Latina-founded, woman-owned research consulting firm inspiring transformation within education by bringing community voice and rigorous research together. Monica and her team partner with foundations, nonprofits, and educational institutions to provide community-centered research, evaluation, and strategy. Monica is well-versed in research methodologies from over 15 years of applied research experience in nonprofits, local government, and education agencies. Monica, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I am really excited to have you here. And I was looking back and I was trying to remember how long we've been working together.
I know.
It's been like almost 4 years. We're coming up on our 4-year anniversary together, which I love. It's been so great.
Yeah, it has. It's wild. I was also looking back at when we started our partnership with you, and it has been almost 4 years, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah. One thing I really love about like the CFO relationship that we have with clients is just that we can really get into it and have that long-term relationship of really understanding the things that you're going through, from as your business grows, because like your business has grown quite a bit since we first started working together, and just kind of seeing the different things that the company needs as growth happens has been really cool. So it's been a pleasure. So I'm just really excited that you're here, and I am wanting for you to just kind of talk about how you guys got started, because you have a business partner. I would love to hear how you got started, from your research background to starting your own company.
Yeah, for sure. So I think to really understand the origin story of EduDream, you really have to understand like the profound impact that education, and particularly access to education, had on both myself and Michelle, my business partner. We grew up in sort of communities where, we attended schools that were less resourced, and despite that, like had really good, I think, academics and really did really well in school. And so I'll speak personally, when I went to college at the University of Chicago, that had a really profound impact, because I thought like I was really at the top of my class. I was like well prepared. And then you get there and it's like, oh, my peers, they know so much more. They've read all the books, they've had all of the experiences, and it just really was challenging, like navigating college, and especially when the student population, it does not reflect you, and there's not a lot of other Latinas or students of color. And so that really like led me to question a lot about my own experience. Like, why did this happen to me? Like, why did I have such a different experience within education academically? and that really stayed with me and kind of led me to really have a career in education and in research. Like I love learning, and so throughout my professional journey, I worked and I went to school for education research and policy, and so navigating all of that, and I met Michelle in college as
Oh,
undergraduates. This was, yeah, I don't know if you know this,
I
Hannah,
didn't
but
know that. No,
this
that's wonderful.
yes, and this was like in the late '90s, so this was a long time ago. And we met as undergraduates, and became close friends with sort of a close knit group of friends, and stayed in touch throughout the years. And coincidentally, her professional career is also in education and research, although we had slightly different paths on our journey, but we've stayed in touch throughout the years, and really close and always in touch. And then in thinking back, I think it was 2014. To put it in context, this was we had Barack Obama as our president. We were approaching sort of reauthorization of the education law. And there was a lot of excitement around sort of the next phase of education. And Michelle and I, we were both, in our careers, and just kind of personally, I was at a place where I wasn't completely satisfied with where I was professionally, and I really wanted research to have impact, to be actionable. And the thing about research is that it can take years sometimes.
Mm.
And so, sort of that's where I was finding myself. And Michelle had her own, we kind of were at a point where everything like aligned. And she reached out to me one day and was like, hey, how can we have a greater voice and a greater impact within education, within sort of our sphere of influence? And what does that mean? And there's a lot of opportunity, as I mentioned, like we're um, entering another phase of education policy, and Latino students are the fastest growing student population. What does that mean for education? And who's leading the conversations about education at that time? This was 2014, so almost 10 years ago. Twitter was like the space where, you know, Twitter and blogs where thought leadership was happening. LinkedIn wasn't the place that it is now. And so, we talked and we're like, okay, why don't we start a blog and we can bring our own voice and perspective? And so that quickly transitioned into why don't we kind of try to do what we do professionally, but on our own as education researchers. And those conversations, it took a year of planning, and then just having a lot of thoughtful conversations about what this could be. And 2 years later, in 2016, we officially launched EduDream, and it's been a journey, as you mentioned earlier, like from just the two of us to now a team. But really, that was the foundation, wanting to bring our own perspective, our own lived experiences, and our own approach to sort of a different approach to the way research is conducted.
Mm. I love that story. I did not know that. So I love it when, even though people like I've known for a long time, we've worked together, that I'm getting these like new stories. Did either of you actually work in the education system? Like, were either of you like working for schools, or was it always kind of in this research capacity?
Yeah, for me, I worked my first job out of high school. My first job out of college was at a high school. Although I didn't teach, I was sort of more on the development fundraising side of things. But it was a new school, very much sort of that startup environment. So you kind of were thrown in there and you did a little bit of everything. So I did get to teach at some point. And then several years later, I had the opportunity to do a fellowship through Harvard Center for Education Policy Research. And as part of that fellowship, you work for a few years in the school district. And so I worked in Elizabeth Public Schools, which is in northern New Jersey, and did a lot of research and data strategy work and just working with teachers and leaders around using data and not being like scared of data and just helping demystify that a bit.
Mm.
And so I stayed there for almost 4 years. And so although neither of us have ever sort of been in the classroom as teachers, we've sort of have our own experiences of being in those like spaces and sort of the impact of, as I mentioned earlier, like access or lack of access to
Mm.
really robust opportunities. And so we bring a lot of that to our work here at EduDream.
Yeah. So it sounds like you guys were in positions where the decisions are really happening.
Yeah.
And I think that that is really critical because you're understanding, who do you need to talk to in an organization to actually move forward and make any kind of, substantive change. Which I think, maybe teachers, although extremely important to the whole education process, they might not have the power in some ways to be able to affect, what is leadership actually doing, like maybe collectively, but, on a day-to-day basis, maybe not so much. So I think that's interesting that you're kind of seeing it from behind the scenes. Can you give us an example of maybe kind of the type of project that you would be doing for a client, or either like who your clients are, at the end of the day, like who the end user is, and then maybe an example of, you know, I guess like an ideal type of project for you and what you might be doing for your clients.
Yeah, that's a great question. So our clients tend to be nonprofits who either have in their mission education or they're providing educational programming. We also work with foundations or any philanthropic organization that, again, their strategy is rooted in education, and also basically any organization who aligns with our mission and vision and really has programming around education. And so what that looks like, it depends on the client, but our services are providing actionable research, program evaluation, so really helping organizations understand what impact their program is having, and for whom and under what conditions is that happening. And then we also provide data strategy services, and this is primarily for our nonprofit clients who are either swimming in data or don't have enough data and are trying to make decisions with
Mhm.
what they have in place. But oftentimes there's like analysis paralysis, or you don't even know where to start. And so we really come in and guide them through that process of essentially like doing a data audit and then working with them on clarifying their theory of change, their intended impact, how they're going to measure that, what tools or infrastructure they need in place to do that, and really setting them up for success to be able to do that. And then our final area of service is around needs assessments. And these are really sort of mixed methods research projects where we take a deep dive into either a community or a set of communities to understand like what are the needs, what are the assets within the community, and that way any investment that's made in that community is really targeting exactly like what the community says they need.
Mm.
And so that work is really tangible and has a direct impact on decision making, to your point earlier. And one example of that, this was several years ago, we had a local foundation, I'm based in Chicago, approach us wanting to conduct a needs assessment of predominantly Latino communities here in Chicago. And this foundation, a lot of their programming is around academics and academic preparation. So they work with like schools to provide like professional development, or they provide after school programming and things like that. And so they had they had an idea of where they wanted to invest further. But before they did so, they kind of wanted to really understand directly from the community, like, what are the biggest needs and where can we have the biggest impact? And so we came along and did a year-long needs assessment, and that included taking a look at all of the public available data around those communities. What are the educational outcomes? And then also speaking to community leaders, speaking to parents and teachers. And it's very systematic in our approach, but throughout the entire process, we ensure that community voice is centered.
Mhm.
And at the end of that year-long process, we learned a lot around um, assets and challenges, but beyond just the schooling and the academics. Like, this was before the pandemic, and a lot of what emerged was mental health needs
Mm.
and bullying and social emotional like challenges within um, the school communities. And so this was really like insightful for our client, because yes, they want to provide like programming focused on education academics, but you can't, like, there's this other broader context that is really important. And so it really helped them rethink like what type of investment and in where they would make, and in which communities. And it looked different in different communities. And so that's our goal with our work, is that we find, what we learn, informs your own like decisions about whether you're developing a new program, you're thinking about, investing further, and really make sure that it's meeting the needs of students and families.
Mm. I I love that so much. I think like my brain is just going like it makes so much sense to focus on strategy and make your before you go and develop a program. People have ideas of like this is a great idea. I'm going to go out and
Yeah,
do it. Or maybe it's like really fueled by passion and they're like the community needs this, and they get really excited about it. Especially I would imagine like nonprofits and foundations that are really
yeah,
driven by values and they really, do have passionate people working, to serve those communities. But like by not taking that step back and really like surveying the people who you're intending to serve,
yeah,
you could be completely off and spend years developing something that's really unsuccessful at the end of the day by not taking in the community voices that you're talking about. Um, so like even from a financial perspective, I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense to invest in the strategy first, um, before you take these big leaps into programs. Um, I love that. That makes so much sense and so needed, I think, if we're going to be effective. And I think that's, what's driving a lot of everything that you guys are doing is wanting these programs to be effective at the end of the day.
absolutely. And when you have limited resources, like, you do want to have the biggest impact, but it can't be without those that you're hoping to impact, those that are like your constituents, whether it's students or families or community members. And so that really is that approach is grounded in the way that we do our work here at EduDream.
Mm. I would imagine that sometimes you run into reluctance for people to actually invest in that first step of the research and the strategy and taking a step back, doing the needs assessment, even. I mean, maybe not if they're coming to you and they already know they need it, but do you ever run into that where maybe they say, hey, I need it, but like they're not willing to actually pay for it at like the value that it truly is?
Yeah, this comes up a lot in our evaluation work, and organizations, potential clients come to us wanting an evaluation of their program. They want to know what is the impact of our work, and they want to go directly into having those like hard numbers and that hard data. And we really need to take a step back sometimes, because you have to really think about where your program is in the life cycle. Like, are you just starting out the program? Has it been a year? Has it been 10 years? And I think if you're just starting out your program, like to want to immediately go into impact, like you have to first understand, like, is the program rolling out as you thought it would? Are you reaching those that you want to reach, whether it's students or youth? And so a lot of the work is us sort of educating to some extent, and kind of helping our clients take a step back and see the value of really, and the way that it leads to um, eventually to impact. So really understanding, like, first we need to know, is the program working as you thought it would, before we can go directly into the outcomes that you're looking to measure. And it's a lot of conversation sometimes, but I think it's uh, necessary, and rather than just saying, yes, we'll do this impact evaluation for you, because at the end of the day, neither of us are going to have the outcomes and the results that we want.
Yeah, that is, yeah, I can imagine that sometimes the education piece with our clients is that can be a big part of it. And just being successful on that side when we're actually going to do the work, we want to make sure that people are understanding the value and understand like why
Yeah.
they're doing it. Um, I want to take a little bit of a shift and ask you, you are a certified woman-owned business, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Certified minority and women-owned business.
Okay. I would love to know a little bit about like when you got the designation, and because this is like it's a federal program that you can go and apply to be considered a women-owned, minority-owned business. Um, but it is quite a hoop to jump through. It's not like an easy process to do that. So, when did you get certified? And do you feel like that was worth it for you, for your organization, and the types of clients that you're serving?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm trying to think back. We got certified very early on. I would
Okay.
say probably within the first year or two of starting the business. And our local Women's Business Development Center was a great resource to go through that process, and kind of, because it is overwhelming, and there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of steps through the process to um, go through that and submit your application. And I'll say that there's the federal, but there's also state and local certifications, and sometimes they're reciprocal. And so it just opens up more um, public, basically, funding. So whether it's at the federal, state, or local level. And it's really, really helpful, because oftentimes there's opportunities or RFPs that um, require or have a certain percentage that need to be designated to a minority or women-owned business,
Mm.
whether that's 20% or 30%. It's like a set aside, and that's growing, and the percentages are getting higher. I've noticed in the past couple of years, and even with the current administration, they're investing a lot more in making sure that small businesses have access to these funding opportunities. And that's one way to go about that. And so what that means is that um, the an organization that, or a firm that is applying for funding, they'll probably subcontract with a minority-owned business to do some of the work and sort of partner together on the project. And we've, since having the designation, like we people reach out to us all the time. Like we are on databases or portals that have minority-owned businesses, and oftentimes there's just so many opportunities out there that there's not, like, we can't keep track of all of that. So sometimes folks reach out to us and are like, there's this opportunity, there's a designation for this. Are you interested in partnering? And then it kind of starts. So it does open up sort of in terms of business development opportunities.
Mm. What types of organizations do you think are mostly focused on having minority-owned businesses as part of the overall contract of some sort? Is it private companies, not so much, but you're not working with private companies. Is it nonprofits more or public entities? What are you seeing?
I I'm seeing it the most in public entities. So federal funding opportunities, or state and local school districts sometimes have that designation as well. State education agencies, when they put out RFPs, they have a designation. Like the Illinois State Board of Education always has opportunities out, and every single one has that's like a set aside percentage. So I think each state is different. I'm not sure if that's the case in other states, but that's for sure public entities. But I'll say that philanthropic organizations are moving in this direction, and they're wanting to expand their vendor base, like the folks that they work with, the consultants that they work with, and really wanting to diversify. And they might not have a like set aside percentage like the public agencies do, but there's that sort of desire to kind of expand their pool of consultants. And so that's also really great.
Yeah, I bet that's a lot values driven. Some of the
Yeah.
philanthropic organizations might say like, "Hey, we want to support this community," and one way we do that is also by bringing in vendors that we want to, uplift. So I love that, and that's something for people to consider. Like, if you have been considering the designation, think about who your clients are and if it matters to them before maybe jumping through the hoop. I think it's great to be able to do it, but it is like a time intensive thing, and there is a lot of paperwork to do. And, there's some businesses that, like, maybe if you're like B2C and maybe your clients or your, your companies, like, they might know, hey, you're a women owned or minority owned business, but it might not be something that actually gives you a leg up from a like competitive standpoint, or help you win more work. Like, it might just be like, oh, it's a nice to have. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's just something for people to consider. I think it's a great thing that you guys have it, especially with the types of work that you do. Um, I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about the RFP, request for proposal process. You guys have really built your business by doing lots of proposals and going for this public work. And, you have to go and, bid against competition in these. And I have some people who say, don't ever, don't ever do a business where you have to rely on RFPs to get your work. But you guys have been really successful in it. So what do you think have been some of the tips that um, you've been able to build your business by going out for bids and doing these proposals?
Yeah. Good question. And I want to clarify that it's kind of shifted over the years. And I think we've learned a lot over the years about the RFP process. And in those first few years of starting the company, like, we did go out for a lot of like RFPs and spend a lot of time and energy to yield not a lot of results. And so there's RFPs that the public agencies, like the federal government and the state education agencies, post, and there's RFPs that foundations or other organizations who are looking for a consultant posts, and those are very different. The public ones, like, very comprehensive, a huge lift. You kind of have to know how to navigate that whole process. And we stepped away from that because we weren't having good results.
Mm-hmm.
And really, our any RFP that we do bid for tends to be either coming from a foundation or a nonprofit who's looking for the type of work that we're able to provide. And even to that point, it's somewhat of like an art, I'd say, because you really have to be strategic about it, I would say, and really understand sort of the scope of the RFP and who the client, yes, the scope of what they're looking for, but also like what the competition is. Like is this something that is really like out there and everyone has access to, or is this sort of a more narrow targeted RFP, and that can change things in terms of how you decide like whether or not to pursue, and also sort of making sure that there's an understanding of what the client is looking for in terms of qualifications and fit, like what are nice to haves versus must haves. And also, are you best positioned in terms of your knowledge and your expertise to kind of lead the work? And so that those are all questions that like we ask ourselves before we kind of decide to qualify a lead and decide to pursue it, because it is a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of effort for maybe not, you know, a good chance. So we want to go into it knowing we have a really good chance. And when we do, for the most part, we've been successful. So that means something's working. So
Yeah, absolutely. Is that like when you're reading the RFP and the qualifications there, are you getting that sense of like, this is for us? Like when you're reading it, you're like, yes, 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 we
yeah,
excel at that. We excel at that. Like we are, this is, almost written for us in some ways.
yeah. And it's not always going to be like 100%, obviously, but if there is like most of the qualifications we meet, and maybe there's one thing, perhaps we don't have prior experience with, I don't know, a math program or something like that, or we've never worked in Louisiana, as an example. Like those, it's important to ask the client, like, are you looking for somebody that's local who understands like the local context in Louisiana? And if it is, if that's really important and valued, then we know like we've never worked in Louisiana. We don't have like staff there or anything like that. So that's important to also to understand what's driving the client and what are those, like I said, those must haves, and going from there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what you guys do so well is really, I mean, you're strategic. It's the work that you do is strategic, but then I think just individually, you two, I've always been struck by how strategic you are and like thinking about the steps that you're taking and why you're doing it. And, when you have limited resources of time, you have to decide, if we're going to, if we have the time to put out 5 to 10 proposals this month, let's be really, really clear on which ones we're going to go after. It's not just a shotgun approach of like, try everything. And you really can't do that with RFPs because
Yeah.
you will spend tons and tons of time and money trying to do that. And it's almost not, you're not going to have great results probably from the shotgun approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe early on when you might have a little more time, you can like spend time like responding to RFPs, but not when you have a team of 8 people and you're being pulled in so many different directions. You're forced to be really like strategic and intentional about what what you pursue and what and that's something that is like exciting and work that you want to do and its values align and all of those things, like it all has to check the box because with limited time, like you have to.
Yeah. Values alignment is, I imagine, really important for you guys. what are some things that you look for when you are assessing projects for values or even team members for values?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, definitely a belief in equity and justice. And that has to be we have to all believe in this. And we have five core values that really ground all of our work with our clients and with each other. And that's one of them. And another one that's really important for us is human centered intentionality. And what does that mean? That means that we sort of value and respect each other and our lived experience and sort of what we bring to the table. And we're kind of really intentional about building relationships with each other, with our clients, and making sure that we're pushing against sort of the sense of urgency that often comes with this type of work. And so that's really important for us. And, collaborative leadership. Are you open to learning? This is more on the team side, like when we're hiring, like we look for that. Do you have like a growth mindset? Are you open to feedback? Because so much of our work is like constant feedback because we're all wanting to produce like the best results for our clients and really deliver. And so a lot of that is collaborating with each other and being receptive to feedback, knowing that this is all to produce like really good work. And so we really look for that in our team. And I'd say those are the most important sort of things that we look for. And
Love that.
obviously they have the skills, the
Yeah.
skills and all
Skills
that.
skills are important, but I have becoming around I've been coming around to the belief that um values match and your team members is more important than skills, because skills can be developed, but values really, um you can't force somebody to have the same values as you do. So if you're always going to be misaligned in that way, you're not going to have the team members that truly get what you're doing. And when you do have
Mhm.
team members that really get it, that propels the business forward. And yeah, I mean, yes, you need to have a background and, all those things, but like, specific skills can be trained in.
Yeah.
So I like that a lot. I oh, I know we're running up on time and I'm bummed about that. But I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about some of the changes that you had in your mindset from going, like, when we first started working together, it was just you and Michelle. And I remember that you guys were kind of nervous and just like hesitant, maybe a little bit. No, maybe not nervous, but maybe just hesitant of like the weight of bringing on team members and starting the process of building a team and having other employees outside of yourselves. And now you have a team of 8, like, all together. And I would like to know, what are some of the mindsets that you've had to overcome, or something that you've shifted in order to go from just the two of you to now your team?
Yeah, great question. Mindset is so important, and I think influences a lot of your life and being professional life. And for me and for us, we were really intentional about like growing the team, and it's just going from two, even to bring on our first employee. It was 5 years, I think 5 years. We didn't bring our first employee on until 2020. And so just making sure that we wanted to make sure that we had like the financial stability to be able to do so. And some of that also comes, is some of that is money mindset as well. And so along with having the confidence that we're building something that will succeed. And so there were a couple of those um, sort of areas that we knew we wanted to continue like building. And we actually started working with a leadership coach in 2019 to kind of help us through some of those mindset things that were bubbling up for us. And so much of that is kind of your childhood, your upbringing. And, if you grew up with not much, then that impacts. And then you're going from your profession or personal financials to now business. And it's not just me, it's like me and my business partner. There's two of us. And so there's that as well. And so we kind of that really helped us working with our leadership coach to kind of unpack that a little bit and kind of know that, it's okay. We have a plan, like there's a plan in place, and we're researchers. We're fact finders too, referring to the Colby. So like, we're not going to make a rash decision. Like, it's grounded in research. It's grounded in sort of the data of the years prior. And so we knew, okay, we're at a place where it's okay. Like this is, if we want to grow and we want to keep having an impact, like this is the next step. And so that really kind of positioned us to be able to take that step. But it was sort of baby steps along the way. Yeah. We didn't sort of hire like 5 people at once.
Right. Yeah. And you did it in a very measured way and thoughtfully, which again points back to your strategy strength. So I love it. I have one last question, but before I ask it, I want to make sure to point people to your website, which is edudream.org. That's edudream.org. But I was wondering, if I were to give you $50,000 to use in your business in the next 30 days, what do you think you would spend it on?
Wow. Well, don't quote me on this because it's always a team decision.
I know. I'm not going to take it to Michelle. Well, Monica said.
No, but really, I think I would really hone in on our community engagement strategy. Like, we have a 3-year strategic plan, and there's the work that we do for our clients, but we also want to have a broader impact and serve as a resource to the broader community in terms of like research and having access to and learning from us, whether that's like smaller nonprofit organizations, or just really anybody who's like interested in research and evaluation and how to do that. And so if we had $50,000, we could really sort of build out like a strategy for what does that mean, and developing like resources and just opportunities to engage community. That's not client work. That's sort of more in this space to sort of build the next generation of like researchers and evaluators that really center community. So that's, and there's lots of other things that I would want to use it for, but if I just had to choose one, I would choose that one.
I love that. Thinking about others and thinking about your community, that is inspiring. Well, Monica, thank you so much for being a guest on the Financial Clarity podcast. You guys have been an amazing client throughout the years, and it's really been an honor to work with you. If someone would like to reach out to you, how else could they connect with you?
Yes, LinkedIn, I think, is a really great place to reach out. I think my profile is just Monica Martinez, so you can very easily find me.
We should be able to link it in the show notes too. So
yeah, for sure. Reach out there or send me an email. It's very simple, monica@edudream.org. So
there you go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been so fun.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.